It's, since this is recorded, you can go back and look at these sites in more detail, and there's plenty of information on them. But I need to establish, in quite strong terms, how basically everyone did this. Ancient peoples did this all the time. And probably it's not advancing. Okay, hang on. There we go. Oh, had me worried there for a moment. Obviously, the most popular, famous site in the world is probably Stonehenge in England. For thousands of years, people gathered there, and they still do. I think you have to win a lottery to be able to go watch summer solstice sunrise, which is quite spectacular here. We have some amazing sights in this country. This is spring equinox coming through these windows of Casa Rinconada in Chaco Canyon, probably built around 1000 AD. And these kivas and buildings had roofs on them, so you can imagine sitting in the dark and on equinox morning having this sunlight come streaming through. Must have been magical. This is a fabulous site, not built in stone, but built with earth mounds. The Hopewell culture probably constructed this around 100 BC to AD 500. It's a massive octagon and circle, part of a huge complex, and this has very precise lunar alignments. And I remember hearing one Native American saying, we always used to mark things by the passage of the moon. That was important to them. This site still exists in some way. I was there 2 years ago. You can see the mounds here and everything, but if you look carefully, if you see this area of flat grass and then there's sand here, that's a sand trap, and this has been turned into a golf course. I kind of equate this to putting a basketball court in the middle of the Vatican. At least this site has been preserved in part, but they just put this golf course right in the middle of it. That's how we treat ancient monuments in this country.
And where is that?
That's in Ohio, Newark, Ohio. Thank you. Sorry, I don't. Okay. Yes, the Hopewell culture out in Newark, Ohio. This is a Squire and Davis rendering of the site. You can see here's the giant octagon where the golf course is now. Most of this is all gone. The circle still exists. But if you're interested in the archaeoastronomy or just the architecture, the building of ancient peoples in America, look up Squire and Davis did a series of fabulous drawings like this, and it's in a book. You can get the reprint of the Smithsonian book on that. So I want to show you what this part looks like today. It was 20 acres. It is now this small bit of field is all that's left because they put a gas company in. Behind this tree line is a 6-lane highway, obliterating the rest of it. And if you can see the title of the road here, they dared call it Modern Way. And yes, this is the modern way, obliterate ancient native culture. It's really, the look on my face says it all. This is probably the most important slide you'll see today. It is for our area in New York area, Hudson Valley area. If you were to be standing here and were to look to the northeast, summer solstice sunrise would rise about here. And what a lot of people know, I was actually talking to a brain surgeon, a real brain surgeon, a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't realize that winter solstice sunset is the exact opposite direction of summer solstice sunrise. And the same with winter solstice sunrise, the exact opposite is summer solstice sunset. and equinox, both spring and fall, are in the same direction, due east and west. And these are the northern and southern moon sets, which gets a little trickier. But if you go to a site and you say, I wonder if this has anything to do with, a calendar site, keeping track of the sunrises at the important dates of the solstices and equinox. Remember this, and of course, have a compass and see if it lines up. There are definitely places where you can go for your exact location, websites, and get the exact degrees that you should be looking. And there's also a great app for your phone called Sunseeker, where it will superimpose if you're holding your phone pointed at a rock or a series of rocks, it will superimpose where the solstices and equinoxes rise and set if you're interested in exploring these sites yourself. Now, of course, constellations in the Western world, we have our own view of what the shapes and figures are. For example, Orion. One of the oldest depictions of Orion is from a 35,000-year-old mammoth tusk, you can see here. So clearly, this was probably important material to carve something like this. It was important to them. But where we see Orion the hunter, the Maya and the Mississippians saw a hand, and the Lakota saw the spine of a bison. So we have to look through the eyes of who might have built these sites and can't superimpose our Western concepts on them. Now this is a good news, bad news. The Miami Circle, about 2,000 years old, and it was under an apartment building, which was demolished, and they were going to put up big condos. And somebody said, "Wait, this is important," and they realized how old it was. All of these post holes. There was an eagle shape. Different archaeological things, probably astronomical alignments. So the city raised a lot of money and bought the site. But if you look at these gray areas here, these are concrete septic tanks. Now, if this doesn't say it all, one of the most ancient sites in America, and we just put a septic tank in the middle of it. Fajada Butte, also in Chaco Canyon. This is absolutely remarkable. If you can see this spiral carved, if you look down in the bottom here, it's way up the side of this butte, this spiral, and they call this the sun dagger. This happens to be summer solstice. The sun comes through these rocks, and only on summer solstice does the sun dagger cut right through the middle. Can you appreciate how much planning and work went to get this precise? And you see it also has alignments for the equinoxes and winter solstice. You get a sun dagger, which will come on both sides. So you can see the time and effort people in North America went to make astronomically aligned monuments. Excuse me. This is Cahokia in the year out in Illinois. In the year 1000, this was a bigger city than London or Paris. And here they didn't use stone. These are all earthen mounds. And this is what's referred to as Woodhenge. This was an astronomical alignment site of Woodhenge. A lot of it is gone today. The major mound, Monk's Mound, this is what it looks like today. And 2 years ago on a very, very hot day, we went all the way up to the top. Once I caught my breath, it was breathtaking. You can see St. Louis from there. And just an aside, St. Louis used to be called Mound City because it had all of these magnificent mounds, which of course have all been destroyed. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio is just stunning. Fortunately, it still exists. It is both a solar and a lunar alignment site. And as I said, I'm happy to say it's still there. You can see I could have spent all week here. It's a magnificent site that has fortunately been preserved. Closer to home, America's Stonehenge. You may have seen something about this there's been some shows on it. Salem, New Hampshire. A couple of chambers, some interesting stone walkways and like tunnels. And then there's a circle surrounded by pointed stones, something like this. And if you stand in the center of the circle, it's a calendar site, because this particular stone, summer solstice sunrise, will rise over the point of this stone. And there's stones for many of the other equinoxes, solstices as well. So we can see that really all around the world, certainly all around North America, peoples built these sites. Yet in our area, most historians, archaeologists say, no, there's nothing, no ancient astronomical sites here. And also the conventional wisdom, and I say that in quotes, Native Americans never constructed anything in stone in the Northeast until, well, certainly colonial times. Not till the colonists came, supposedly, did Native Americans build anything in stone, which I dispute. And this letter also disputes this. This is a letter written in 1654, where this man is saying, I hear report of a stone wall and a strong fort in it, made all of stone, discovered near Pequot. Well, the site this man is talking about is Gunjiwamp. If you ever get a chance, you want to visit this site. Stone walls such as this definitely looks like a Manitou stone. This is north-south orientation. Our guide told us this was a sheep pen, and the person I was with said, well, then why didn't they turn the stones sideways to actually keep the sheep in? He didn't appreciate that. But there's a chamber here, very interesting stone chamber. Here's the inside. Only on equinox does a shaft of light come in, and I'll show you James Whittall's diagram. A shaft of light comes in, there's this tiny little antechamber. I'm 5'4", and I had a very hard time fitting in there. And only, again, on equinox. Now, our guide said that this was just a storage chamber for tanning supplies, and my response was, well, they really must have enjoyed hitting their heads, because you just can't get in and out of this comfortably. And why would they build a tanning supply shed to absolutely align to equinox? It just doesn't make sense. All right, so now let's get to our own area. In the year 2000, I was reading our local newspaper, and there was an article about them doing sonar study of the entire length of the Hudson River, looking for signs of pollution. They identified 400 shipwrecks from all ages, and they said there were a pair of stone walls under the river that had to have been built prior to 3,000 years ago, because that's when the last time the water level was low enough. It was just a few lines in the article, and I'm like, wait a minute, who's building stone walls in our area 3,000 years ago? So it took some doing, but I tracked down a couple of the scientists who worked on the project. And the one man said, well, I'm probably not supposed to tell you this, but they're in Newburgh Bay. And he said that they caused a great stir. Everybody was very interested, and it was basically promptly swept under the rug. So I contacted the state to try to get these images, and I felt like I was being treated like a criminal. Or, well, what do you want them for? Because they're of great historic interest. Well, who said they were stone walls? The scientists who worked on the project, and it was a long back and forth, and finally they released these two images, and you can see quite clearly they certainly look like parallel walls. And this is a side view of the elevation of them, but no specific coordinates where they are, and to my knowledge, still no further study. Now, this is a very important number as well. In New York and the Northeast, there were 252,000 miles of stone walls. This was I love this, statistics of fences in the United States. Leave it to the government to spend money on something like this. In 1871, they did this study, and it turns out all the stones that went into this 250,000 miles of stone walls would have built the pyramids of Egypt 100 times over. It would have taken 15,000 men, 365 days a year, 243 years to construct all of those. So we are to believe from 1628 to 1871, all of these miles of walls were built. And I just threw on the bottom here a population. You can see how small the population was really prior to 1720, 1740. Can we not say that, yeah, maybe somebody else was building stone walls? Maybe the Native Americans who lived here for 10, 11,000 years figured out how to put stones on top of stones and make stone walls. In fact, I came across an old history from the 1600s where an Englishman was saying, oh, we hire the Native Americans to build stone walls because they're so good at it. Well, maybe that's because they had been doing it for generations. Now, here's the mother of stone walls. This is a site called Indian Hill near Monroe, New York. And I've been there with historians who say, oh, it's just farmers clearing their fields of stones. You can see the size of this stone wall. It just goes up and stops at the top of a hill. And you can see there's stones still everywhere. So they really, if you're going to clear a field and build massive walls like this, you might want to finish clearing the field. This I'm standing on here is about a 271-foot wall. At its widest point is 24 feet wide. You could drive a truck on this. It's massive. So I did a little sketch of, what, I am not a surveyor, but I used my Garmin and got some points and used a map previously drawn. This is the wall I was standing on here. It seems that there's a parallel wall of the exact length, about 270 feet, and it's pointed to 302 degrees, which is summer solstice sunset, and the other direction, again, the opposite, is winter solstice sunrise. And I just cannot believe that a farmer, with everything he had to do, decided, well, come on, boys, we're going to build an astronomically aligned set of parallel walls. It makes no sense. Then there are even longer walls, which are both parallel again, a little farther apart. These have an interesting orientation, 353 and 173. I have given this presentation to a room full of astronomers, and we can't figure out what that orientation is. But again, I have seen this 353, 173, 7 different examples of alignments like this in the Hudson Valley. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I can't tell you what it is, but it's not random field clearing. So as I said, that one of those massive walls I was standing on should have been a sighting area for summer solstice sunset. So last year, um, my husband and I hiked out there, and you can see I am pointing to the setting sun. I don't know if you can appreciate this golden glow that just came right down the entire length of that 270-foot wall. Absolutely no doubt it was aligned for summer solstice sunset. So I call it now Sunset Boulevard. I kind of have goosebumps now. If you're interested in these sites, there is nothing like experiencing a sunrise or sunset there. Standing where easily 1,000 people could have stood on this wall and watching the solstice. Then we have interesting features like this. This is called Balanced Rock in North Salem, New York. At
You muted yourself.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I don't know how I got muted there. Okay. So this is Balanced Rock, North Salem, New York. About 60 to 90 tons of a pink granite glacial erratic. In other words, the glaciers dropped this. It's New Hampshire granite. But the interesting thing is, it is perfectly balanced on these are limestone, which certainly look to me like they have been carved limestone supports. For many years, the local historical society here said, oh, it's just a freak of nature. The glacier went by and happened to drop them. Limestone does not look like this in nature. Limestone looks like big blocky chunks. They finally admitted, yes, this looks man-made. And also, to stick a pin further into this is a freak of nature, almost 90 miles due, why am I, hold on, almost 90 miles due north, there's another massive granite boulder. Can you see the supports here? Also look like carved, pointed limestone supports. So that's two of them just in our area, and there are certainly others throughout the Northeast. High Point, New Jersey is called that because it's the highest point in New Jersey. You've probably seen this monument if you've been driving on Route 84 between Pennsylvania and New York. This is a war memorial, and I have heard from several sources that there used to be a fairly remarkable ancient stone site here, which was bulldozed to put in this monument. But High Point still has a couple of interesting features. This was a sketch drawn by surveyor Tom Brannan and Dr. Andy Smith. And this represents the two mountains there. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And there are three large boulders. And initially, they thought, well, let's go during one of the equinox or solstices, because we bet if you stand behind the boulder, sunrise will come up over the highest point. They had the right idea, the wrong orientation. Actually, where the two mountains dip down, let me show you that. This is the High Point Monument. You can see the way that the mountains dip down here where they meet. This is the summer solstice stone with a really nice piece of quartz running right down the middle of it. And you can see the point, and the first morning, summer solstice sunrise, the sun comes right up over this point between the two mountains. You can see this is Lake Marsh, I believe it's called there. So this is right by the road. It's just fortunate they didn't demolish this when making the road. And there's stones also for equinox and winter solstice. And again, it's where people never used to know about this. And then the last time I was there, the staff from the park was there and other people had gathered. So people are beginning to realize, and again, it's, to me, it's a tremendous experience to watch one of these sunrises. Now, what's this all about? Well, the first time, this is, I believe, yes, this is the equinox stone, and we were there on a very cold fall equinox morning. The sky was clear, 360 degrees until right before sunrise. The sunrise should have been right here. You can see this thick bank of clouds moved in. You couldn't see anything. So I threw up my hands and I said, you know, this is Zimmerman's law of archaeoastronomy. The quality of the weather is inversely proportional to the importance of the viewing event. I can't tell you how many times we've hiked miles in the darkness and the cold on a clear night, only for dawn to be raining, snowy, cloudy, all of the above. This is a remarkable site in Kinnelon, New Jersey, at the top of Pyramid Mountain. I believe it was 13 degrees and windy the day we hiked up here. Talk about perched boulders. This is enormous. The important thing here, see this crest comes to a point. If you stand in the center of this site, winter solstice sunrise comes right down over the point. And there's other aligned stones at this site, including these two perched boulders. Not very high perched, but they are. They have rocks to keep them in place. And this site's important because the state of New Jersey actually has come out and said that Native Americans built this maybe 1,000 years ago to watch summer solstice sunrise come right down the middle. To my knowledge, in our area, this is the only officially recognized Native American astronomically aligned site. And it used to be even more precise because right here on this ridge, there was another prominent boulder, like the bead sight on the end of a rifle. So it was an even more precise alignment. But in the 1980s, somebody bought this property, wanted to put a big house on it, and they're like, we don't want this big rock on our property. So they bulldozed it over the edge of the cliff there. Lake Tirati in Harriman State Park, absolutely worth a hike. This is a massive triangular shaped perched boulder. And some people had studied this back in the 70s and 80s. And here's the rock on their survey map. They're calling it a calendar site because where you see these lines and these circles, these are all boulders that have astronomical alignments. They calculated that this, if you stood here, you would see summer solstice, you would see equinox, you would see winter solstice, and there's pairs of boulders all around that have astronomical alignments. So they felt that this was a site that was refined and other people came to it and built their own alignments. Probably something that developed over many, many years. So I put my little transparency of the equinoxes and solstices, and it looked very much like winter solstice sunset should go right over the point of that big boulder I just showed you. So we hiked up there, and my compasses, and I'm looking, and the sun's setting, and I was so disappointed because I realized the tip of this boulder is pointed too far to the west. It would not line up for summer solstice, and I was so convinced. And so I'm standing there. I think I had my arms folded, and I was, I had my back to the stone, and I'm like, how, I don't get it. This should be. And my husband's like, Linda, turn around. And I'm like, why should I turn around? It's not. He goes, trust me, Linda, turn around. So I turn around, and there's this big orange ball of the sun that is about to cradle. Right, this part is clearly carved out, and the sun fits like hand in glove in here. Again, this picture doesn't do it justice. It's just absolutely beautiful. Maybe the rock used to point towards it, but like the Kinnelon rock, where they carved the little point on the top, I think whoever was aligning this carved this bowl in the back, so winter solstice sunrise goes right into it. Um, I had identified another pair of boulders that I thought might be for equinox sunset. And a couple of years ago, I believe it was fall equinox, I went and from the what I believed was the platform observing rock, see this pointed stone? This is fall equinox sunset. Does it get any better of an alignment than that? Just beautiful. And like I said, I never get tired of watching these alignments happening and wondering who stood there hundreds or thousands of years ago, I think, and watched this significant event happen. This was a site in Kingston, New York, right next to the big shopping mall there on 9W. And it's very interesting. You know, these rocks, you've got this huge boulder here, and there were all these grooves cut into the bedrock. Very, very interesting. Well, a sports bar wanted to build something here, so they were going to destroy the site. So I was talking with some people. We kind of raised some, we had people calling the supervisor, and he got very angry. He said, "No, we talked to somebody who knew somebody who said their uncle built this site in the 1950s for fun." Excuse me, sorry about that. And that was enough for them. Um, you know, without really doing any archaeological work. And so this is what they did. They removed all the boulders, and you can see that whole platform, for whatever reason, they completely demolished that. So absolutely nothing is left to even begin to study. So sports bar wins out. The chambers are probably some of the most intriguing and definitely controversial sites in the area. Popular, well, I don't know if it's popular, but historically they are considered root cellars. There's a lot of reason why they don't work at as root cellars. They don't have ventilation. They had no doors. Some people have, you know, in the past tried to repurpose them and put doors on them, but there's quite a few that are astronomically aligned. This is the typical interior: corbelled walls, dry stone construction, no masonry. A few have almost like benches in the back, or you know, stone slab, and the roofs are enormous, enormous slabs of rock that are lined up. And another reason these don't really work as root cellars, can you see the dampness? These are very, very damp. No ventilation, damp. Your potatoes and vegetables are going to rot really fast in these things. Now, this is called the DeLong Cook Stone Site Map. It's not completely accurate, but it gives you an idea. Wherever there's a push pin, there's some stone site of interest, and it's an interactive map. You can find it online. If you put your cursor on it, it'll tell you what it is. And you see this huge cluster here. Over 200 of these stone chambers were built in the Putnam County area. Again, if they were root cellars, I grew up in Rockland. I live in Orange County now. Great farming area. Not a single stone chamber. Not a single stone chamber on the west side of the river. And if I can zoom into that location, all of these stone chambers, unfortunately, a lot of them have been destroyed, but there's still quite a lot of them. And fortunately, towns are finally preserving them as historic sites. They won't go on record, I don't think, as to who built them, but at least the destruction hopefully has been curtailed. The largest, or one of the largest, is the King's Chamber, which is in the town of Putnam Valley. You can see I'm standing at this massive doorway. It's huge. There used to be a standing stone here. Vandals have pushed it down for some reason. I can't understand people like that. Here's the interior. Again, you see this here. This is somebody's attempt long after it was constructed to try to put concrete. A lot of them, farmers probably who bought these lands and had chambers on them, tried to stick concrete. But the moisture, most of the concrete has crumbled. It just didn't work. This is my friend and his little kids. You can see how deep this is and the size of the roof slabs. And somebody who had read my book was inspired to camp out here this past winter solstice, and he took this fabulous photo. Late afternoon, the winter solstice sunrise came right into the chamber. And you have to wonder if there would have been some special alignment if that standing stone was still standing. This is one of the finest examples of a winter solstice chamber. This is in Wangtown Road in the town of Kent. And this is a wonderful chamber. Again, we hiked here in the darkness, got here at dawn, and it is such a beautiful sight. Only on winter solstice does the sun come right in the doorway and illuminate the back wall. And obviously, this was not built on a whim. A farmer didn't make this as a root cellar and just happened to perfectly align it to winter solstice. And about 270 feet away, there is a smaller chamber. Unfortunately, you can see it's partially collapsed. But I have this 18 million candle power light that I can simulate sunrises and sunsets with. And pointing from the due east, you can see that on equinox, the back wall of this chamber would also illuminate. So within less than 100 yards of one another, you have two stone chambers that tell you winter solstice and the two equinoxes. So I don't think those were root cellars. All right, the last site I want to speak about. This was a sketch done in 1845. This is near Sloatsburg, New York. If you've gone down the New York State Thruway, right before you cross into New Jersey or turn the corner towards Rockland, there's a rest stop there, and this site is located up on the hill behind that rest stop. Now, the important thing here is when this diagram was made way back in 1845, they called it a diagram of supposed prehistoric walls. So in 1845, the origins were unknown and they were considered to be prehistoric. Here's a much better version. This was done around 1980 by a couple of historic groups got together. And you can see it's kind of a confusing array. These features are all stone mounds. The largest here, 60 feet in diameter. I'll show you in a second. This is a very interesting feature, which I'll get to in a moment. But like, what would a farmer be doing? I don't know. There's no opening in this enclosure, and then walls just like this. This is also a very important feature I'll get to in a moment. I was studying this, going there for many years, and I started looking for astronomical alignments, which I'll get to in a second. But you can see this is one of the stone mounds. That takes an enormous amount of work, 45 to 60 feet in diameter to this height. Some of them are depressed in the center. It looks almost as if there was a chamber of some sort here that over the years or centuries has collapsed inward. but nobody has, well, I won't say nobody has studied these. One group pulled apart a section of one and didn't find anything and didn't put it back together. But other than that, no dating techniques have been employed here, no real study. Um, we have astronomical alignments, solstice and equinox alignments, which, got me even more interested in the site. And then let me go back. This area here, now I've been an amateur astronomer since I was a little kid. And I said, this kind of looks familiar, this pattern of four lights. And I was reading up that some sites have Pleiades alignments. Now, the Pleiades are a very distinctive star cluster. It also happens if you have a Subaru. Those stars are the stars in the Pleiades. So you can look for this pattern of the four brightest stars. We took a picture of the Pleiades, made it, and then superimposed it. And this may be coincidence, but the four brightest stars match up pretty good with these four stone mounds. So I really think, the Native Americans often tried to mimic what was in the sky on the ground. And I think they did it at this site. So I did some calculations. There are programs where you can show where the Pleiades would set every year, which was an important thing. When the Pleiades set, it was safe to start planting. This entire 200-acre site has one fireplace. And if you were to stand at this fireplace, this is where the Pleiades sets in the year 2000, 1500, and 1000. So you can see between 1000 and 1500, the setting of the Pleiades would basically be right down the middle of those stone mounds. Speculation, but I think we're kind of beyond coincidence here. One other thing I think we are beyond coincidence with is just to get a grasp on the site. I calculated the distance between, this is basically the center mound of the site to the stone fireplace, and got a distance of 471 feet, which meant absolutely nothing to me. I then went and said, well, what's the distance from the stone fireplace to this, what I call one of the Pleiades mounds? It turned out to be 471 feet. I'm like, wait a minute. I started making measurements. Every one of these black lines, I think there's 30 some odd instances where stone mound to stone mound, wall to wall, are measurements of 471 feet. This is not random field clearing. This is a precise measurement using a standard unit of measure. I don't know what that standard unit is, but this is just too much to be coincidence. I did fractions of it, and each one of these lines is like half or 1/4 of that measurement. So you can see everything here was built with a standard unit of measurement. And this section here, I call it the lens-shaped mounds. A key on a map that gives you, 1 inch per 100 miles or whatever it is, and directions. These are aiming due north and south. These two smaller mounds are exactly half of the larger mound, and everything here is constructed to give you what the units of measurement are. So if you were to come to this site whenever it was built and come here, the directions, north, south, and then you'll figure out east and west, and you'll know what the units of measurement are. This, I think, is just a mathematically precise masterpiece by whoever built it, for astronomical reasons, for who knows what ceremonial reasons. Um, and I can't get anybody. I'm trying to get a geologist. I'm trying to get archaeologists here, and I just haven't been able to get anybody to really study this seriously. Oh, and here I went the opposite direction, doubled the measurements. So everything here, even the distance between the farthest points, these two lines are equidistant. So nothing random about the Ramapo Walls site. All right, just briefly, um, missing in archaeology, a couple of things. There was this British geologist, Finch. You would probably be interested in this. He wrote a book on the Celtic antiquities of America. He thought that a lot of the things he was seeing, like the balance stone in North Salem, was of Celtic origin. And he's writing here that he had been informed about a stone circle near the town of Hudson that attracted notice because of the remarkable size of the stones and their position. It sounded something like it was a Stonehenge. So I contacted Columbia County Historical Society. They had never even heard of this. And the best we've been able to determine that this stone circle used to be on Mount Marino, but when they put in these electrical lines, these large towers, the site was bulldozed. I would still like to get to this site and look around to see if there are, you can see tantalizing things about stones lying around to see if there's any remnants of it. But we might have had a Stonehenge in the Hudson Valley um, that just got destroyed. But I want to end on a happy note. I used to talk about this as missing in archaeology. Um, this was also written about and sketched by John Finch in 1824. It was this large semicircular boulder that was in this kind of cradle, and it was said that one man could push it and make it rock. And I tried years and years to find this, and finally, I am happy to say it looks like I'm hugging it because I'm so happy to have found it. It seems to have had part of its roundness fall off, but I'm not. I'm not like tree hugging this. I am actually pushing this massive boulder and making it rock just a little bit. But is it a natural formation? Could be, but there are houses, this housing development all around here, and I'm just grateful that nobody, a developer didn't knock this down or blow it to bits. So this is what I do. I am always on the hunt for new stone sites, new information. Um, if There are hundreds of photos on my Facebook page, Mysterious Hudson Valley Stone Sites. My book's on Amazon. You can get in touch with me via email and also through my website. Um, I love talking about this, as you can see, and I love sharing stories about these, and I would love to hear about sites in your area. So I am going to stop my screen sharing, and I will now be happy to entertain questions if anyone has them.
Could I ask, where was the rocking stone?
Oh, excuse me, that was Peekskill area. I can't really tell you exactly where it is because it's on private property, but it's still there and it's still rocking.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know anything about the spiral on that stone up by Frost Valley? It looks like a path.
Yes, from what I've heard, that is something more modern. That's that was what I was informed that it was might have been a more recent artist who did that.
When I looked at it, it almost looked like the lines was a trip from Mesoamerica, I'm sorry, from the Middle East along North Africa, almost from here. But that's my interpretation when I looked at the carving.
Right. Yeah, I have not seen it personally. I'm only going by what the articles I've read about it.
Mhm.
But there are
But-
certainly other petroglyphs that are ancient in the area. Yes, somebody had a,
I have two questions. I'd like to be able to walk up to the Tiarati sites. I actually was at Lake Tiarati yesterday, walking on Tiarati Brook Road. I'd like to be able to go to those sites. I also have friends in Sloatsburg, so I'd like to be able to check those out too. Are those accessible?
yes, they are accessible. I have directions and coordinates in my book, but I can just briefly tell you the Tiarati site. If you're at the Tiarati Circle and you walk up the hill to the Appalachian Trail and turn left, south, keep going, and I think less than 20 minutes, you can't miss that massive boulder, and you will be at the site. The Ramapo Wall
So
site.
wait, is that like up on what's called Fingerboard Mountain, maybe?
Fingerboard, no. Fingerboard Mountain, I think, is the other direction.
Okay.
If you go to my Mysterious Stone Sites Facebook page, I think somewhere in there, I think I posted a map. But if you find the Appalachian Trail from the Tiarati Circle and head south, you will hit upon it. The Ramapo Wall site is a lot trickier. You will need the coordinates to navigate that. I think it took me 7 attempts to find it because nobody had coordinates on how to get there. So you have to actually park on a small road called Council Crest Road in Sloatsburg. You go up the hill by the water tower and then follow the coordinates from there. It's probably only a half an hour walk, but you can get lost real fast if you're not navigating by GPS and you haven't been there before.
Is that on public land?
It is. And so on the one hand, it's being preserved. On the other hand, people riding their quads illegally through there every day. And I'm sure the site is being degraded. They just go through, they open parts of stone walls so they can drive their quads through, and they drive over the mounds. I have reported this to various people, and they don't seem to care. They don't think the site has any significance.
There was something on that looked like the Little Dipper, sort of.
That's possible. I'd have to go back to it. Let me go back. Hang on. Let me share screen again. Let me go back. Where did you see? Where here?
Just that little closed-in area that then it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I've tried to line that up with constellations. I haven't. Maybe I'll try the Little Dipper.
May I ask the question? Is there any evidence of Native American cultures or tribes claiming ownership or creation of them? Has anyone found anything like that?
There was someone from, most of the Native American tribes were long gone by 1810, I think, in this area, and there are some remnants, and one person who was an elder of a local Native American descent said, "You do not hunt at this location," which I thought was very interesting. They weren't sure why, but it had some significance, so you don't hunt here. There was an I hate to use the word archaeologist, let's call him a treasure hunter, who excavated this whole area, found tons of stone points, stone tools, pottery, and sold it all. And all of that record has been lost. But clearly this area had a very long history of Native American habitation.
Also near Split Rock, which the local Native Americans do consider to be an important spot. And that's in Hilburn, this is Sloatsburg, they're very close.
Split Rock in Hilburn. Where in Hilburn is Split Rock?
Oh gosh, you can't, you have to hike in from New Jersey, but it's right
Okay,
over the border.
if you could send me information on that, I'd be very interested. Do you know if it has any astronomical alignments?
I think it does, yeah.
Okay, I will
And they're,
look that
the local, Native American tribe is trying to preserve it and purchase it
oh, good.
because it might be turned into a housing development otherwise.
Oh,
That's the Ramapo Lenape tribe.
Yes,
Hey, Linda, it's Glenn Kreisberg. Can you hear me?
hey, Glenn, how are you?
Good, thanks. Great talk you've been giving.
Thank you.
Really so informative. I just wanted to bring up and mention that, you know, since one of the other questions was about sites could in fact be ceremonial stone landscapes, but what are known or have been identified by the United Southern and Eastern Tribes as ceremonial stone landscapes. And in that region in particular, there is a group of Native Americans, the Ramapo Lenape, keepers of the pass, who do recognize these sites as sacred, Split Rock being one of them. Not sure about the Ramapo walls, but many of the other sites in that region, the New York State, New Jersey border, falls right into that area where the Lenape and the Ramapo, Muncie, this would be the Muncie, the northern dialect.
Right.
They recognize many of those sites. So I just
Oh,
wanted
good. Yeah, not to my knowledge the Ramapo Walls site, but it was one of the Ramapo descendants who did have that, you know, said that was a sacred area. But nothing, I have not been contacted by anyone, you know, officially. And can you speak to the Frost Valley carving?
Sure, I know that came up earlier this year because there was something similar found at the Ashokan Reservoir when the water was very low, and somebody identified a circular petroglyph that looked a lot like the one that was identified up in Frost Valley. And then through some research, it turned out that there's a Japanese artist who lives up in Fleischmann's, up further up 28, I think in that would be Delaware County, perhaps, who did claim that he was the artist who carved these, you know, in the past few decades.
Mm-hmm.
A continuous line artist is how he bills himself.
Okay.
So these are you know, replicas, you might say, of traditional or ancient petroglyphs, but yep, modern.
That's
and
what I thought.
Not to be confused with ancient.
And Glenn, please, can you give a little pitch or a little talk, you know, just tell people about your incredible work at the Overlook Mountain site and when might be the next time people can visit?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Linda. Sure. Overlook Mountain Center stewards a nearly 40-acre site up on Overlook Mountain that Linda has come and visited and checked out several years ago. That has wonderful stone constructions, and this has also been identified by a Native American tribal preservation officer as a ceremonial stone landscape. So it's got that three-dimensional configuration, things connecting, built on the ground that connect to the sky, but also to the underworld. We're hoping to have a full slate of hikes and excursions to these sites up on the overlookmountain.org website, and we will be hopefully leading tours this year, and folks are welcome to get information there.
Wonderful, thank you. Glenn is one of my heroes in this field because he is just doing fabulous work, actually preserving these sites, studying them, and giving tours. So please go to the Overlook Mountain website. Thanks, Glenn.
So thank you, Linda.
Wanted to ask,
Yes.
hello?
Yeah. Liz there, Liz Lee has a
Yes,
question.
I have two questions. I wanted to ask you about your opinion about the monoliths that's been appearing in different geographic locations. That's one question. The other one is, do you think, is there any significance of those monoliths? Is it related to the ancient tribes, or not necessarily Native Americans, but other ancient people.
Talking about the metallic ones that were just found like in the canyons.
Yes.
To my knowledge, those are of modern construction. Correct me if I think they were welded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, so you don't think it's of any significance other than it's a man-made?
That's my take on it. I would
Okay.
love to be wrong, but from what I've heard, they were modern material welding and
Okay.
as to why someone would go way back there and put it somewhere, there could be some very interesting reasons behind that. So the materials may be modern, the motive, that is anybody's guess. And I love a mystery. Thank you.
Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you know, we know Tom Brannan very well.
Oh,
We've gone to a lot of his talks.
yeah, he did fabulous work. I couldn't do half of what I've done without his groundbreaking work and his excellent surveying. So, yeah, if people look up the work of Tom Brannan, yeah, he's just done incredible work.
Hey. Ask, has there been any successful dating of these stone sites in the Northeast?
The one of the chambers in Massachusetts did get a date of between, I believe it was between 650 and 880 years old for just the entrance of the Upton, Massachusetts chamber. So, which puts it way pre-colonial. It doesn't seem to be getting a lot of press. Some other sites, Glenn, are you still there? Have you gotten your OSL data back yet?
No.
We haven't. We took samples extensively throughout the Northeast in September and right up through November through NERA. But what's exciting to report is the site in Ole Hill, Pennsylvania that came back in May of 2020. And these were samples that were taken nearly 2 years previous to that, because it takes a long time to process this optical stimulated luminescence sample collecting. But the site in Ole Hill, Pennsylvania returned dates of stone construction of 770 BC plus or minus 300 years. So that's about 2,500 years ago for that stone cairn and wall site in Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. And then the America's Stonehenge, I believe they did carbon dating for thousands of years old as well. So I would love to know why the mainstream is not jumping all over these incredible dates.
I'll tell you one of the reasons with optical stimulated luminescence, it's really the methodology that's being questioned. They're not even looking at the dates. They're really challenging the collection methods, the methodology used in taking the samples from the different sites. And what's really important is that the people doing this work are meticulous and very, very, very conscientious of the fact that it's going to be scrutinized. You know, I think Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary data. They are really doing their due diligence in how they're doing the sample collecting. And once they've got a dozen sites, and if the dates all line up within a certain range, then I think they'll have some corroboration that you know, stand up.
Then you and I, Glenn, are having a party.
Woo woo.
We're having a stone site party. But really, it doesn't, you know, you just have to visit these sites. Don't just look at pictures and read books. Go to these sites, walk the walls, look at the solstice and equinox sunrises and sunsets. There's just no question. These are not random constructions. These are built with a great purpose and need to be preserved and studied.
Linda,
can I make a comment?
Visiting site.
I just wanted to say
Yes,
that the King's Chamber
an obsidian blade or dagger was found, and it was tested and dated around 2,000 years, but they lost it. So I'm not
Yes.
sure if you heard of
Yes, yes. The obsidian dagger was misplaced apparently, and there have been other artifacts found in the walls of some of the chambers that have also gone missing, unfortunately.
that. And I just wanted to say there are 4 chambers on Lockwood Lane. I was just there yesterday. So there's.
Dean Miller, I'd like to add something. I have to leave in a minute, but the cone that's underneath at Balancing Rock,
Right.
that's a known phenomena. The pressure of the harder rock on the softer rock strengthens the softer rock immediately underneath, so it weathers more slowly than the items away from it. If anybody's interested in looking this up, go to Wikipedia Hoodoo, Hoodoo, and the geological entry for hoodoo, and there's a mention of lots of places where this occurs. Okay, I enjoyed this a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Linda, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. I wanted to, speaking of visitation, have you ever visited Cornwall in England? Because that is supposedly one of the most fertile places where standing stones and coins and other prehistoric, I'll say artifacts, are located sites. And it is there that you can see standing stones in fields that are cultivated by farmers. They're that numerous. So it's an extraordinary place, and supposedly more artifacts there than any other place in England, including the province or the state where Stonehenge is located. Also in the south, in Georgia, around Macon, there's some pre-Mississippian stone mounds there, which have been fortunately taken over and preserved by the National Park Service.
Good. Yeah, no, I have yet to be to Cornwall. Pre-COVID, I was supposed to go to the Orkneys to see those stone sites. So post-COVID, I will be taking stone site tour of the UK for sure.
Hello, Linda. Could I make a comment, please?
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Rob Buchanan. I live in northern Westchester. I would like to recommend to everyone here, and hello, Glenn, that NEHSSIE is an organization that Glenn mentioned. I think it is the only official organization that is studying, researching, cataloging, and doing their best to preserve stone sites and other related issues and structures throughout the Northeast, including New York, New Jersey. And I would recommend anyone who's interested in ceremonial stone landscapes and the stone sites that Linda has been discussing is to look at NEHRA's website, NEHRA, NEARA.org. Look at what they have and look at the research that they're doing, and please consider joining the organization, which will only make it stronger and able to carry on its efforts with research and preservation.
Yes, thank you for that. So go NEHRA.org, I believe is the site.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, they have wonderful photos online and are doing great, and they have conferences when allowed, which are certainly worth going to. Yes, T. Friedel.
That must be me. Yeah. Hi, Linda. Love your work. Great
Thank
talk. Question for you, because I have been going to some of these places, and one question that occurs to me: do you think in all these sites the trees would have been removed for better effect?
Absolutely. It's maddening at some of these sites trying to look at the alignments, knowing they're probably there behind the trees, but Yes, there's some great articles on how they would clear cut a landscape, and I'm sure Glenn can probably speak to that as well. But absolutely, the trees had to have been gone.
Hey, Linda, Matt Adams here. How you doing?
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Doing great. Couple of questions. I've been live streaming this to my group. I've got a couple of questions that come in. Someone would like to know if you've done any research up in the New Hampshire area.
Only as a spectator, not as a researcher. So yeah, there's some amazing sites up there.
All right, thanks. And the other question they had was, how can one find a copy of the John Finch book?
I found a PDF online. I don't know about a hard copy version of that, but you can find the text of it, possibly Google Books. I can't recall the source, but I was able to get the entire text online.
Great, thanks. I'll try to follow up with you, and maybe you can share the link.
Sure. Any other?
Linda?
Yes.
Hi, I want to apologize for coming in late. I thought it started at 3, so I missed everything great.
You missed a little bit, just a little.
I'm so sorry. Do you have, because I just Googled you, a mailing list, a newsletter?
No, I don't send out a newsletter. If you go to the Facebook page, Mysterious Stone Sites, you don't do Facebook? Okay. Yeah, I don't like to bother people with mailing lists, but you can email me if you have a specific question, or you can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, it looks cold out there.
Yeah, well, my dog is a maniac, so we're outside, and I'm trying to keep my undivided attention here. I was interested in whether you do much sites along the Delaware River.
No, I have not. I have not gotten to that area yet. I have my hands full in the Hudson Valley.
You know that you said there's not much west, but there's a Jensen's Ledge, which is really nice, but I'm thinking that's more, it's not so historical, but I'm not, it was an old quarry, and I wasn't sure. There's sculptures and stuff.
Let me clarify that. Stone chambers are not to the west of the Hudson River. There's a lot of sites to the west of the Hudson, just not the greatest concentration of those chambers is the Putnam County area.
Okay, right.
And they're also throughout the Northeast, but not so much west.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And the Overlook, where is that located? Overlook.
That's near Woodstock. Glenn, are you still there?
Yes, I am. That's Overlook Mountain is right outside of Woodstock, New York.
Okay.
And the Overlook Mountain Center, overlookmountain.org, does tours up there throughout the year, usually once a month, and to other sites as well. So you can get a hold of us through that, either on Facebook, Overlook Mountain Center, or online, overlookmountain.org. Excellent.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And at some point, before all craziness came out, I was going to conduct a NERA tour to and open to anybody to the Ramapo Walls. Hopefully someday in the future that will continue, but you don't need me. Get the coordinates, go to the Ramapo Walls, go to these other sites and explore them for yourself. It's nothing like being at a site, as I said, and experiencing it firsthand. Okay, Donna, I guess we are good.
This was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Linda, for coming. I really appreciate it for the second time. And I appreciate everybody else coming. We had a bigger group this week than last week, which is nice. So thank you all for participating in your great questions. Right, and thank you again so much.
All right, take care, everyone. Happy exploring.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Donna,
Bye-bye.
you said you recorded it. Are you going to send us a link to that?
What'll happen is it'll go in about a week. It'll go on our website, timeinthevalleymuseum.org. We'll also have it on YouTube. We have a site there, so just check back there.
fantastic. Thank you so much for doing
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was wonderful. Very informative.
Linda, what was the count?
Today we had about 91 people.
Okay, thank you, Donna.
I just want to say thank you as well. My name is Karen. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I got you the second time around. It's our